I've heard this one question hundreds, if not thousands of times over the years. I just caught my husband, fiance, lover, boyfriend, whatever he is, cheating on me. Should I stay and try to work it out, or should I throw in the towel and call it quits? I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take Two, where I share what happened in my life when I found out that my husband of 24 years was cheating on me. I never set out in life to become a cheating husband expert, but thanks to my cheating husband, I have become one through lived experience, therapy, research, and working with my own private clients in my Man Proof Your Life program. And I definitely have some personal opinions on what to do once you suspect or discover adultery. And I want to start here by saying that if you are scrolling through YouTube right now looking for videos on this topic because you have recently discovered adultery, my heart breaks for you. I know personally the pain, the shock, the numbness, that feeling of dissociation that can often come when you discover that somebody that you loved and trusted has any sort of double life behind the scenes. It was, for me, the single most painful thing that I've ever gone through as an adult. And if you've been on my channel at all, you know that I've gone through a lot of painful things. It was worse than pulling the plug on my grandma. I know what you're going through. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but you'll work your way back to happiness. Again, I'm actually happier on the other side than I was before. I've definitely learned a lot of things along the way. I'm going to share a few of those with you, and I'm going to give you my rule of thumb to answer the question, should you stay or should you go? In the months following the discovery of my husband's double life, 22 years into our marriage, in a relationship where I never once suspected any type of adultery for a variety of reasons, number one being he was extremely active in our church, and he wasn't just like fake active. Like, he would be the guy sitting there in the middle of sacrament meeting with tears rolling down his face because somebody was like, blah, blah, Jesus. He was the first one to help all of the grandmas move and pack up their U-Haul trailers. And he would wake our kids up at 5:30 every morning to read scriptures before school for many years. So that's one of the main reasons why I never thought he had a double life going on. So it was a complete shock to me. And after discovering his double life, I dove into trying to heal our marriage. I'm going to link an article in the description about some of the factors that went into me having to stay. I had been a stay-at-home mom for 22 years at that point and had absolutely no way to support our 4 children and myself on my own. But there were other factors like trauma bonding, religious pressure to save my marriage and keep my eternal family together, as well as a general belief that I was a horrible human being after 22 years of abuse and neglect, and a fear of ever finding love or being able to rebuild a new life on the other side. So for these and many more reasons, I got to work on healing through support groups and private therapy and all kinds of online forums with other women who had gone through betrayal trauma themselves. And that threw me into this vast network of other people who had been there before me, who shared a lot of wisdom with me. Some of whom had just discovered adultery, and it was really fresh with them, like it was with me. Other women who maybe it had been 3, 5, I think the longest gap between discovery of adultery and being in one of these groups was 19 years. And right away, something really jumped out at me. And that was nobody was ever moving past the adultery. And I began to really see firsthand that adultery is a trauma very similar to losing a child or losing a parent. And it is experienced almost universally as something that is painful and long-lasting and very difficult to process through. And I wish that somebody had really impressed that on me in the beginning, that this wasn't just some little thing to get over, that I was climbing a relational Mount Everest, and I probably didn't have the gear or the stamina to summit that hill. To give you just a little bit of contrast between adultery versus other forms of grief, I've also participated in support groups for divorce, generalized grief, like the loss of a loved one after my grandma died, and a support group for survivors of near-death experiences, which was really emotional. Not one of those support groups came close to the desperation, the depression, the hopelessness, and the just grief of those of us whose closest, most intimate partners had cheated on us. And I don't know if there's some type of like psychiatric scale out there where they like rate trauma and grief. But just from my personal experience, if you have discovered adultery in your relationship, just know that it is one of the most difficult traumas to overcome of anything that I personally have ever experienced, for what that's worth. Now, I'd like to share with you my personal formula for should I stay or should I go? Number 1, good, yes. Bad, no. If you're in a good relationship already and it's working for you on so many levels that I can't get into in this short video, you have compatibility, you have mutual respect, you have connection, and you're going the same place in life. And in general, it's a good marriage that maybe just was going through a rough patch. Maybe there was some conflict that hadn't been resolved. Maybe you had bad relational skills and were having friction just because you simply didn't know how to have a good relationship, and that led to adultery. I would say yes, it's worth a try. But if it was a bad relationship from the get-go, then the answer is no, because that adultery is just going to be the nail in the coffin of a corpse that has already been dead for you fill in the blank of how many years. And this is something that I wish that somebody had told me when my 22-year abusive marriage suddenly turned upside down with the discovery of adultery and a complete double life. Ironically for me, my husband getting caught in a double life gave him this wake-up call that sent him into a love bomb phase that I didn't know was a love bomb phase that would confuse me and reinvest me in a relationship that had been terrible from the get-go, and suddenly seemed like we were in this golden era of Camelot. And this honeymoon phase in the middle of a toxic marriage confused me and prevented me from making decisions that would have changed me ending up homeless and all of the other stuff that I talk about on my page. For our very last Valentine's Day together after discovering adultery, my husband would give me the infamous Valentine's card that you can screenshot and read for yourself. Jenny, I'm sorry I cheated on you. I lied and deceived. I've withdrawn love our entire lives. This whole entire Valentine's card is an apology for all of the horrible things that had come for 22 years. I've hurt you deep. You suffer at my hand. I've destroyed your innocent nature. I've failed as a husband. I've caused major damage to our family, blah, blah, blah. I've worked against you, didn't recognize you as my equal partner, just sincere laundry list. And he hit all those buttons for me. I actually remember thinking when I read this card, first of all, I'm stuck. I have nowhere to go. What options do I have? This is creepy. But also, he sees me. For the first time in 22 years, he finally sees me. Your needs have gone unmet for years. Most of all, you endure pain and torment with me. I don't feel empathy, which leaves you all alone, insecure, and alone. After this super romantic Valentine card, my husband would throw himself into being the man of my dreams, and he was the man of my dreams for a couple of months. Let me do the math on this. I got this card, obviously, in February, and in October of that same year, our marriage would explode when I caught him picking up another escort and found out that he had been dating multiples of women behind the scenes while also pilfering money, liquidating our assets, and eventually leaving me homeless and completely high and dry. So what was that? 8 months from this card until he was no longer a changed man. If you have a bad marriage and there's adultery, it's over. Just end it. Number 2, Jenny rule of thumb on staying or going. Once a cheater, always a cheater, and you have to be okay with that, or it's time for you to walk out the door. I know the statistics are like 70% of people who've had affairs will eventually cheat again, and usually just not admit it or get caught the next time. I personally have never known one single cheater who didn't cheat again at some point on that same partner. The circumstances that led to the adultery in the first place are still present in the relationship. You haven't changed, he hasn't changed, and you're taking the risk of him cheating again. If you're okay with that, then stay married. If you are not okay with him cheating again, then it's time to divorce and walk out the door. Number 3, your mind is like a steel trap, and you may forgive, but you will never forget. Believe me when I say that I sat in support groups with women whose husbands had cheated so long ago, and they would still cry and express pain whenever they talked about their husband's affairs. It's been 7.5 years since I discovered my ex-husband's double life, and doing this video today gives me pain. I have only healed because we're no longer trying to be in a relationship. I don't see him. I don't have those triggers. There is no amount of therapy that can just erase your brain. And we as humans are wired not to forget betrayal. If your intimate partner in the wild betrayed you, you would be alone, you would be abandoned, your children would be abandoned, and you wouldn't survive. So our brain is actually wired to protect us and keep us alive by not letting go of things like adultery. This little bit here that you may forgive, but you will never forget is important for the men to recognize too, because often men get frustrated when they're doing everything that they can to patch the relationship back together again and prove that they're trustable and re-spark that love. And they want the women to forget. They think that there's some magic trick that they can perform that's just going to erase the memories and heal everything. And it's important for the men to realize that she will always carry that wound. I heard one adultery expert say that it's like the husband was driving along in a truck and didn't realize that his wife jogging along the side of the road was a little too close to the truck. He ran her over. And he may scoop her up and take her to the hospital and whatever, but the fact will always remain that he ran over her with that truck, and she's going to have the scars and the steel plate in her hip and the artificial tooth. Lastly is my whole new world rule. This is very simply realizing that you are in an all new marriage. The marriage that you had together for 5, 10, 20, 40 years is over. Adultery ends all of the parameters of the relationship as it was before. And it's really important to mourn the loss of that relationship and separate so that he can go over there and heal those things that led to the adultery, and you can go over here and heal as much as possible from the heartbreak of discovering adultery. Give yourselves time and space away from each other without like all of those endorphins going just because you're snuggling on the couch watching Netflix together, so that you can assess and go through whether or not this is a positive relationship that should be carried into the future, what you're willing to do to patch it back together, and really just clear your head at the same time mourning the loss of that marriage. And if both of you agree that you want to stay together, come back together, realizing that you are now in a completely new marriage. This is your life take two. This is the perfect time to really educate yourselves with therapy, support groups, books, retreats, things like that, establishing some new habits as a couple. And it's the perfect time to renegotiate some of the terms of your relationship. Things like finances, making sure that both partners have retirement accounts and sources of income so that they both feel secure in the relationship with the new knowledge that relationships are definitely fragile. Maybe there are some things that need to be renegotiated around the house, like who takes the kids to their club volleyball team on Saturday and who does the cooking. What you don't want to do is take all those things that weren't working for you and copy paste them into this second act of your relationship. Let me wrap up today with this. My trauma and abuse therapist provided a similar list to me when I had discovered my husband's double life, and I ignored the entire thing and just decided to put on a happy face and use good vibes and fairy tale magic to patch things together so that we could have our happily ever after. And if you've been on my channel at all, you know that that did not work out well. I have 2 great regrets in life. Number 1 is ever becoming a Mormon stay-at-home mom. And number 2 is not ending my marriage the moment I found out that my husband had been cheating on. Now, my favorite part of everything I do, I'd love to hear from you. If you've discovered adultery, what did you do about it? And what was your final deciding factor? And if you've never experienced this, what do you think you would do? Thanks for watching.